Homelessness among Africans abroad is one of those issues that we can no longer afford to whisper about, if you know what I'm saying. And I know that is a heavy way to start this video, but sometimes the truth is heavy. Sometimes the truth is very uncomfortable. Sometimes the truth is the thing that we keep avoiding because if we say it out loud, it means we have to do something about it. So let me say it very clearly. There are Africans abroad who do not have a safe place to sleep. Yeah, and if you are an African, you're currently in Africa, you're considering life abroad, you are in for a very rude awakening. I hope you watch this video to the end, because in this video, I'm not just going to tell you and state the obvious that Africans abroad are homeless. No, that's not what I'm here for. That's not what my mission is about. Yes, there are Africans in the diaspora who are one job loss away from homelessness. These are facts. There are Africans in Dubai or the whole of UAE, Gulf countries in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, Africans in Europe, Africans in America, in Canada, and in many other places abroad. Africans who are living so close to the edge that one delayed salary or one visa issue, yes, because sometimes we need visas to live in these other countries. That's why we have borders. One bad agent, especially fellow Africans, one wrong decision, one emergency can push them into a situation that they never imagined for themselves. And today, I do not just want to talk about the problem. I want to talk about a solution, or at least a beginning of one, because I do not believe we can keep telling people, be careful, without also giving them practical ways to protect themselves. I do not believe we can keep saying life abroad is hard without explaining what makes it hard and how people can prepare better. Because the fact is, Africans right now and for so many ages to come are going to keep having to travel to other countries to look for job opportunities. That is an inevitable current fact, because the world is not about to change in one night. And I do not believe we can keep pretending that homelessness among Africans abroad only happens to careless people, because that is not true. Sometimes it happens to people who are working. Sometimes it happens to people who trusted the wrong person, the wrong agent. And sometimes it happens to people who sent too much money home because they were carrying family pressure. And sometimes it happens to people who lost their jobs so suddenly. Sometimes it happens to people who have no or had no emergency savings because their salary was already too small. Sometimes it happens to people who did not understand the risk of being abroad without a proper plan or a backup plan. And sometimes it happens very quietly. Last night at around 3 a.m., I received a call. A taxi driver had met him through, a normal interaction. He lives and works and drives a taxi in Abu Dhabi, but he was in Dubai that night. Like last night, he was in Dubai. And while he was in Dubai, he came across someone who did not have a place to sleep. Someone stranded. Someone stuck. I'm guessing he probably called the person up like, hey, do you need a taxi? Someone who, for that night, did not know where they were going to rest their head. Now, the full story about that person, how they ended up without a place to sleep, is not the main point of this video. And I know people like details. People want to know, what happened? Was it their fault? Did they lose a job? Were they scammed? Why didn't they plan? I used to receive such a comment like, why didn't you plan? Why don't you go back home? But sometimes when a problem becomes common enough, the individual story is not the only thing we should focus on. Because if you hear one story, you can say, maybe it was that person's fault. It's their mistake. If you hear two stories, you could say, these people have bad luck. But when you keep hearing different versions of the same pain from different people in different situations, in different countries, then you have to stop and ask, what is really happening here? What are the patterns? What are the common denominators? And from the stories I've heard, there are two common patterns that keep appearing. One is sudden job loss, and the other is unfaithful agents. Agents who take money from unsuspecting people. They promise them jobs, they promise them visas, they promise them accommodation, they promise a better life abroad, and then disappear, or sometimes simply fail to deliver. Both of these situations can destroy someone very quickly, but today I want us to focus especially on sudden job loss, because sudden job loss opens a much bigger conversation, a conversation about financial management, a conversation about black tax, a conversation about family pressure, a conversation about emergency funds. I'll break all this down in future and give you my experience in black tax, family pressure, and also my current financial management with emergency funds. But today let's have a conversation about Africans abroad who need to plan differently because our risks are different. And I want to say something very carefully here. This video is not about blaming families back home. Don't misquote me. It is not about saying Africans should not support their families. It is not about telling people to become selfish. It is not about pretending that black tax is something you can just wake up one day and be like, ooh, no more black tax for me. Because for many Africans, many of us, black tax is not just a financial issue. It is cultural, it is emotional, it is historical, it is family that we are talking about here. It is survival. It is expectation. It is the reality that many of us come from families and communities where one person's progress is expected to carry more than one person. And when you move abroad, that expectation becomes heavier, because to many people who are still in our home countries, in our communities, being abroad means you have money. Being in Dubai means you are doing it means you're doing well. Being in Europe means you are stable. Being in America means you have made it. Being in Canada, it means your life is sorted. Being outside of Africa can make people assume you now have the capacity, even when you are still struggling, even when your job is still unstable, even when your salary is still very small, even when your rent is high, even when you are in a shared accommodation, even when you are one emergency away from homelessness, you're one emergency away from panic. So no, I'm not going to sit here and say, just stop paying black tax. Because for many Africans abroad, that is not realistic. If someone gave me such advice, I would spit in their face. It is not realistic. And honestly, trying to change everyone's perception back home, it can become like a full-time job by itself. I tried. You can explain until you are tired. You can say, life abroad is expensive. You can say Dubai is not easy. You can say, I am also struggling. You can say, my salary is not as big as you think. You can say, I pay rent. You can say, I have visa expenses. I am not rich. And still some people will not fully understand, not because they are evil, no, but because they have never lived your reality. Most of our families have not lived abroad. They have not had to worry about visa expiry. They've not had to pay Dubai rent. They have not had to lose a job in a foreign country with no family or no house to return to, no family house to return to. Sometimes when you're in your country, you lose your job, there is always a family house somewhere. They have not had to choose between sending money back home and saving enough to survive if something goes wrong. So instead of save all of your energy trying to change everyone's perspective, trying to convince people about how hard life is abroad, I want to suggest something that is more practical. Accept the reality. Accept your situation and plan around it. Because if you are an African abroad, especially if you are just starting out, you cannot afford to live without a plan. You cannot afford to send money like someone who has no risk. You cannot afford to spend like someone who has a family house nearby. You cannot afford to assume your job will always be there for you. You cannot afford to think it cannot happen to me. Life abroad is very different. And that brings me to the first thing you need to understand. You are miles away from home. That sounds obvious, but I want you to think about what this means financially. Back home, if you lose a job, life can still be very hard. To be honest, I'm not pretending unemployment in Africa is easy. It is not. But in many cases, you can still have somewhere to go. You may go to your mother's house or your sibling's house, your cousin's house, your auntie's house, a friend's house, to your village home, a family home, somewhere. Even if it is uncomfortable, even if it is humbling, even if it is not ideal, there may be a place where you can, pause. You can lose a job back home and still not immediately worry about visa expiry, because guess what? You are home. You don't need a visa. You can be unemployed back home and still not worry that your legal stay in the country is connected to your employment. You wanna guess what? You are home. You can take a recess. You can regroup. You can stay with a family member. You can eat from someone's kitchen for a while. You can breathe. But when you are abroad, especially in places like Dubai, with the summer, the UAE, the risk is different. If you lose a job, you may lose income immediately. Some people have several jobs, so someone might lose one job, they still have another one. Or they lose a job and they have some gratuity. They have some income. If your accommodation was connected to your job, you lose a place to sleep. Same day, same time. If your visa is connected to your job, which is the law, you may begin worrying about your legal status. If you have no savings, you may start depending on people very quickly. And let's face it, this is Dubai. Who are you gonna depend on? If you don't have a strong network, you may become vulnerable. And if your family back home is still expecting support, the pressure becomes even heavier. This is why, as an African abroad, you need a job loss fund. Not a savings account for enjoyment, not money for shopping, not money for December, Christmas, not money for showing people that life abroad is working. A real job loss fund, money that is specifically set aside for the possibility that your income stops suddenly. And because the question is not just, do I have a job today? The question is, if this job ends today, how long can I survive in this foreign country? Can you parent for 1 month? Can you parent for 2 months? Can you buy food? Can you move around to look for another job? Can you keep your phone active because you might need to buy some data or whatever? Can you renew or manage your visa situation? Can you avoid sleeping outside in the hot summer? Can you avoid depending on someone who may later exploit you? I'm talking to you ladies. This is not out of fear. This is wisdom. And I know some people will say, but how can I save when my salary is small? That is a fair question, because many Africans abroad are not earning such big monies. Many Africans, especially in the UAE, and especially those starting out, are working with salaries that are already stretched. Some people earn around 2,500 dirhams. Or even less, sometimes without accommodation. If you have to stretch 2,500 dirham, sometimes without food, sometimes without transport. And from that same salary, they are expected to pay rent, eat, obviously, move around, take care of themselves, and guess what? Send money back home. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend living is easy. It is not. But I will say this. If you are abroad and you do not build even a small emergency fund, you are exposing yourself. You are leaving with no shield. Even if you start small, start. Even if it's 100 dirhams a month, start. Even if it's 200, please start saving. Even if it takes you 1 full year to build a 1 month survival money, build it, because something is better than nothing. Trust me. I had to send only 200 dirham to this person. I don't even know how they've stretched it, but that's all I had. And because the day that trouble comes, the money you saved quietly may become the difference between hitting the streets. Why am I laughing? It's not even funny. I've hit those streets. I shouldn't be laughing. That money could be the difference between stress or disaster. The second thing you need to do is to separate black tax from your survival money. This is where many of us get it wrong. This is where many of us make mistakes. We treat all money as available money. You have money in your bank account, your salary comes in, rent goes out, transport goes out, food goes out, family requests come in, someone is sick, someone needs school fees, someone has rent issues, someone has an emergency, someone needs business support, someone needs help. And because you love your family, you love your people, you send. Then another request comes in, you send again. Then something happens to you and you realize you have nothing left. This is why you need to categorize. Before you send money home, remove your survival money first. Before you support others, protect your basic stability. Before you become a solution for everyone, make sure you are not one step away from needing rescue yourself. And again, this is not selfishness. This is stability. If you collapse abroad, the people depending on you may still need help. People in Africa will always need help, but you will no longer be in position to help them. So you need to ask yourself, what is my rent? What is my food? What is my transport? My visa risk? What is my emergency fund condition? What can I realistically send home without destroying myself abroad? What can I realistically send home without destroying myself? Not what people expect, not what makes you look successful, not what removes guilt temporarily. That survival guilt, what can you actually afford? Because guilt is expensive, and many Africans abroad are making financial decisions from guilt. That is not strategy. It's not capacity. It's not because you're capable. It's not planning. It is just guilt. You feel guilty because you are abroad. You feel guilty because people think you are doing better. You feel guilty because someone back home is struggling. You feel guilty because you left. You feel guilty because maybe family helped you travel. You feel guilty because saying no makes you feel like you have changed. You're no longer the nice child that was raised by your family. But if guilt controls your money, your life abroad will remain unstable. The third thing you need is an honest conversation with yourself before you have one with your family. Because sometimes we say family pressure, my family is putting me under pressure. And yes, they do. But sometimes we also participate in creating the wrong image. We tell people we are fine when we are not. We post only the best parts on our social media. We exaggerate our stability. We only post standing around Burj Khalifa, Dubai Mall. We send money beyond our capacity. I've known a few people who borrow money to send home. That is literally sending money beyond your capacity. We refuse to say, cannot right now, I can't help you. We act like everything is okay because we do not want to disappoint the people we love the most, our family. And then people continue asking because they genuinely believe we have more than we do. So before you blame everyone, ask yourself, have I communicated my current reality? Have I told people that I'm still building my life abroad? Have I made it clear that living abroad is expensive? Have I created boundaries? Have I allowed people to believe I'm more stable than I actually am? This does not mean you tell everyone your private business. No, you do not owe everyone access to your struggles, but the people closest to you, the people who depend on you, the people who keep asking. They may need a more honest version of your current reality abroad. You can say, I'm still settling. I can only help with a certain amount. I need to build my emergency savings. You tell them the truth. If I lose my job here, my risk is going to be very high. I might end up homeless. I cannot send money every month right now. I can help when I'm able. Don't expect. Some people will understand, especially those who love you. Some people will not. But your boundary cannot depend on whether everyone is going to understand. The fourth thing you need is a return plan. Yep, I know people do not like this one because when you move abroad, especially from Africa, nobody wants to think about returning home. Returning can feel like failure. Returning can feel embarrassing. Returning can feel like the dream has collapsed. But having a return plan does not mean you are planning to fail. It means you are respecting reality. If everything goes wrong, what will you do? If you lose your job and cannot find another one, where will you go? If your visa becomes an issue, sometimes visas get denied. What is your plan? If your accommodation becomes unsafe, who can you call? If you need to leave the country, do you have a ticket? If you need to go home and restart, what will you do next? These are not negative questions. These are adult questions, reality questions. And if you are abroad, especially if you are new in the diaspora, you need adult answers, because one of the things that pushes people into homelessness abroad is not only job loss, it is lack of options. They cannot pay rent, they cannot find another job quickly, they cannot go home. They cannot tell their family. They cannot ask friends. They cannot afford a ticket. They are ashamed. They are stuck. And that is when the situation becomes dangerous. So please, if you are abroad, have a plan that includes the possibility of leaving. That does not always mean failing. Sometimes leaving means regrouping. Sometimes leaving means saving your life. Sometimes leaving means returning later with a better strategy. I have left Dubai before when things did not work out, more than once. And at the time, it felt like failure. But now I understand that sometimes going home is part of the journey. It is better to return with a plan than to remain abroad in a situation that is breaking you, in a situation that is unsafe. The fifth thing you need is community. And this connects to my previous video about Africans abroad needing each other, because homelessness does not only happen because someone has no money. Sometimes it happens because someone has no safe network. There's no one to call. There's no one to ask. There's no one to guide them. There's no one to warn them about fake agents. There's no one to help them think clearly. There's no one to connect them to temporary support. There's no one to say, I know a place that you can stay for tonight. There's no one to say, let's find a solution. But community must be built before the crisis. Do not wait until everything falls apart before you start looking for people. Build healthy relationships. Build professional networks. Build friendships carefully. You join communities wisely, not with your eyes closed. Stay connected to people who are serious about growth. And also be the kind of person who can be trusted, because community is about everyone bringing something to the table. Support goes both ways, honey. If you want community, you must also learn to be community. Share information, treat people well. Do not just exploit. Do not exploit newcomers. Do not shame people who are struggling. Do not gossip about someone's lowest moment, because tomorrow it may be you who needs the support. The sixth thing you need is to stop romanticizing struggle. This one is actually important. As Africans, sometimes we are too proud of suffering. We say, I can handle it. I will manage. I have been through worse. I'm strong. And yes, you may be strong, but strength is not a plan. Endurance is not a strategy, trust me. Suffering quietly is not wisdom. If your living situation is unstable, acknowledge it. If your job is unstable, Acknowledge it. If your salary cannot sustain you, acknowledge it. You may not have to tell anyone. Just acknowledge it. If you're sending too much money home, acknowledge it. Do not wait until the situation becomes dramatic before you finally admit the truth. The earlier you face reality, the more options you have. The seventh thing you need is a personal rule for every salary that you receive. This is my practical suggestion. Every time you receive money, your salary, you divide it before your emotions touch it. Do not wait for requests. Do not wait for guilt. Do not wait for someone to call you crying. Decide your structure first. For example, rent, essentials, emergency fund, food, transport, family support, personal needs, then savings or debt repayment. The exact order may change depending on your life, but the principle is the same. Your money needs a plan before people give it a purpose. Yeah, your money needs a plan before other people give it a purpose. Because if you do not assign your money, someone else's emergency will assign it for you. And I know that sounds harsh, but yeah, it's true, especially for Africans abroad. Your salary can disappear into other people's needs before you even understand what happened. So create rules. Maybe your rule is, I save something every month before sending money, or I only send what I can afford. I keep 1 month of rent untouched. I do that. I always have 1 month of rent untouched. I do not borrow to send money home. It doesn't matter the emergency. It really does not matter the emergency. I am telling you, for me, even if someone is sick, I stopped borrowing money to send money home. I do not empty my account for non-life-threatening requests. If someone is not sick, I'm not going into my savings account. Any other emergencies, you're gonna have to figure it out if I don't have the money. I build my job loss fund before upgrading my lifestyle. Rules protect you when emotions are too high, and abroad emotions are always high. So what is the solution that I'm suggesting today? A job loss fund, you can call it a survival fund or a safety fund, whatever you want to call it. If you are an African abroad, especially if you are just starting out, you need money that exists for one reason: to protect you if income stops. That's it. That's all. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you do take and heed my advice. I hope this channel is the kind of channel that you're going to subscribe to. And as I share along so many things that I really want to share, my experience, my tips on how to find jobs, where I find my jobs, or how I find my jobs, how I find the places I live. So this is the channel that I wish you can consider subscribing to religiously, watching religiously, and heeding my advice, because I don't dish it out without intent, good intentions only. So thank you for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.